we are really happy to have Agil today joining us here. And he is the director of the documentary 69 Minutes of 86 Days. And so a big welcome to Agil. And we are also excited to have your film in our Refugee Film Festival this year. And to begin with, is there anything you would like to share with our audiences here in Hong Kong and in Macau?
Except that I'm extremely delighted to be included in your program and to be able to share my film with your audience. I'm glad also to be able to join you, not physically, but online based with this interview. So thank you for having me.
Thank you so much. And so maybe the first question I have for you would be, since we all know that the Syrian refugee crisis has lasted for years, since 2011, we know that you and your team went to the Greek island of Kos in 2015 for this film. So why did you decide to make a documentary on this topic in particular at this time? Is there any, some of the news you come across that has impacted you, or some other reasons you have?
Well, at that time, it was fairly early in the situation was fairly early when we started to plan this, and there was a large number of news depicting the whole situation as a huge crisis, and everything that you could experience through the news was basically the horror of the situation, and very few films and also media and journalists were focusing on the sort of humane side of it, and not only the catastrophe of the human situation, but also they were kind of depicting it as a catastrophe of people coming to Europe and the numbers and blah, blah, blah. So we felt there was room for a film that was focusing more specifically maybe on one single person. And we, together with my wife, I was kind of preparing this idea of focusing singularly on a child. So basically, we went there with a very specific plan of finding a main character. And that's where Leon suddenly appeared.
Mm-hmm.
The main character of the film, yeah.
Yeah. So we also noticed that Leon has been a very cheerful girl with her own charisma. So are there any other reasons that you decide to pick a child from all the refugees, as many of other films may focus more on the family or on the adults? Were there any particular reasons that you choose to put all the focus on the child and film from her perspective instead?
I guess there were a number of reasons for in particular focusing on a child. One thing is to turn upside down a little bit the view, the perspective of things, just to open up, to have another viewpoint, and to see the world from somebody's perspective, which is put into this situation innocently, and the child, whatever her family situation, or whoever was the parents, or if they were alone, or whatever was the case, still it would be impossible not to put the child into a situation of innocence, of being sort of lost. But also we were hoping that the child could be able to represent something that had to do with this cheerfulness, or maybe a more naive approach to being in that situation. So maybe we can see that from the film too, that she not only sees this as a tragic maybe journey and a very tiring journey for her family, but also it's a kind of adventure, and this parallel was very important for us. Even from when we were planning the film, we assumed or imagined that it would be something like this. So that's why we also chose a very specific age. We wanted to find somebody within 3-4 years, because we assumed that they had this kind of perspective and ability to relate to their surroundings, but still be very open-minded.
Yeah. So you talk about like open-minded and some characteristics of a child. I'm just wondering, like, were there also other reasons that you pick Leon? Like, how did she impress you at the time you met her? And was she really behaving what you expected before? Maybe you have some thoughts in your mind that maybe the child would cry a lot during the long journey, and did she behave like that, or she was completely acting out of your expectation?
I think she was, the short answer would be yes, she was completely acting out of my expectations, but in a positive sense. When we first met Leon, she was a very forthcoming, and she was very open-minded, and immediately when we came to talk to her parents, she was kind of already playing with us and in the crew. And she was not afraid, and she was very eager and curious. So I think I think all of us, we were 3 people at that time in the crew, we immediately fell in love with her. And after we met her, we sort of gave up looking any further, because she kind of ticked all the boxes. But we were expecting her to cry more, of course, and to relate to her surroundings in a different way. And we were maybe positively sort of surprised that she was acting in such a maybe mature way, in a way. She was only 3 years old at that time, and it felt like she was much more mature and handling the situation very well, always helping her parents, for example. I don't know if I would expect that from a 3-year-old, maybe here in Norway or anywhere else where the situation would be different. So it was a sort of love at first sight, yeah.
That's fantastic. Yeah. Did you have found a character with very strong charisma that is so appealing to both audiences and the crew? And we're also curious why you chose to have no voiceover during the production at all, and just show the audience with your raw clips. Are there any like special reasons that you particularly want to bring out, or you want to create some kinds of like atmosphere to our audiences?
Yeah, I guess it stems from the idea of I'm originally educated as a still photographer, and I always imagined this incident of being able to make a still photo come alive, sort of, so that you could experience the time before the actual image and the time after the image was taken. And this is sort of the privilege of the film medium, that you can handle time in a specific way. And I think from all the films that I'm making, I'm interested in letting people experience time, and not emphasize the idea of telling anything, but maybe let the audience experience something within the set boundaries of the world that I'm creating. So basically the whole idea of the film was to emphasize the feeling of presence. We wanted to put the audience into the situation of a refugee, and to travel together with this person. And to be able to achieve it, we were always thinking in terms of having long takes, to having a moving camera. So all of this was pre-planned, and that's why we also kind of chose the specific lens. Everything is shot with a 32 millimeter, and we were using Steadicam and blah blah blah. So we were kind of planning for this the whole time. Yeah.
So we know that it is really a long journey from Greece to all the way up to Sweden. So would you also share with us some of the most unforgettable things you have come across during this travel with Leanne and her family? Maybe some like happy moments or frustrating times you have during this trip?
I mean, strangely enough, some of the most memorable moments were the ones where I didn't film, because I think it's like that when you're filming something, that you become so you basically I became a part of their family because I was always traveling with them, and most of the journey I was traveling alone. So because of this reason, they were kind of helping me, and I was helping them a little bit, and everybody, we were basically traveling as a group. And the most unforgettable part of it is, of course, the connection that the family had. They were a group of people, and they had an incredible ability to help each other and to have a positive sort of mindset, which was impossible for me to relate to because I was always an outsider. I always had my Norwegian passport, and everything was, there was no harm that could happen to me. It felt like that. But for them, there was a total, let's say, they had no knowledge about what the next day would bring. So all that fear they were able to process in a very beautiful way as a family. And this was very, like, throughout the whole journey, this was a very beautiful thing to experience. And I think this was also very motivating for me to be able to try to make the journey and make the film happen, because it was worthwhile telling that story.
Yeah. So we also see like lots of beautiful moments that you have featured in the film, and we also want to ask like how has the filming of these refugees changed you? Especially you have like been physically crossing the borders with them, even though you mentioned that maybe you guys experience different things because you have a passport and they are like refugees. But how has all these changed you, do you think?
I think in many ways. I mean, that's the beauty of documentary filmmaking, is that you have the privilege of getting to know some people very closely. And in this case, I got to know this family, and I think the idea of, or I mean, the beauty of having a large family and the beauty of being together as a whole, and then kind of encountering all this problem, was something that sort of, I think that changed me a little bit. I now have a 6-month-old baby myself, or a child, and I have to admit that I wouldn't say that the film changed me to want a baby, but for sure it had an impact on my mindset about thinking in terms of family and all of these things. And of course, I think the courage of people and their ability to sort of adapt to any kind of situation is sort of comforting in a time where a lot of people are fighting, and there are a lot of problems all around the world. But as long as you can sort of have this idea in the back of your head that on the average, people are very beautiful, and you just have to look for it within them. And yeah, this was interesting to experience firsthand, because normally it's hard to get to know anybody without meeting them and spending time with them. So I think this is the danger of the world, that we need to spend more time with each other, across all borders and all cultures and religions and whatever. It doesn't matter. People are the same.
So yeah. So first thing I would like to say is congratulations for becoming a new father. And it's actually like it's soon the Father's Day in Hong Kong as well. So we also want to include this message in our film festival that like some of us can celebrate with our fathers in our families, but like many of the refugees, many of the refugee children in particular, they can't really have the chance maybe to have reunion with their families, and many of the children, they are basically unaccompanied with their parents. So there are lots of like refugees in the world that they are like lacking the opportunity, unlucky like us to really have the whole family together. So this would be also one of the messages we also hope like through your film, we can see like the happiness of having family and the beauty inside. But we also have to remember that like many of the people and refugees, especially because they're mostly fleeing from wars or conflict or persecutions, that they really need many of our support. And so just as some background information for some of the audiences, that currently we have like 5.6 billion refugees. They are fleeing from Syria because of the wars seen since 2011. So it has been like lasting for really many years, and we really hope that like more people can like Agile, what Agile is doing is to speak up for refugees and try to contribute to society by encouraging more people to pay attention to these issues. And this year, we particularly want to say we want to tell people that every action counts, because as we all know that we are sharing the same communities, and we actually should embrace the diversities we have, even though we are from different countries. And we hope that everyone can help in making a difference. And this would be some of the like the statistics and some points of view from our perspective that we will also want to share with some of the audiences here. And maybe some the final question we have for Agu today would be, could you also share with us some of the updates, if you know any, about the current lives of Lian and her family in Sweden, and have you been talking to her from time to time to know how she has been living?
Yeah, I try to stay updated. What is happening? It's like a constant or like a lifelong sort of relationship, even though she's living far from also where I'm living. But I try to stay updated on their life and what they're doing. And I know that there has been marriages. There has been, not for Leanne, but for her family members. And Leanne is now in school, and she's speaking very good Swedish. Maybe her parents is struggling a little bit more with keeping up with her, let's say, child's abilities of learning very quickly languages. And but yeah, they're still clinging on to the life in Sweden, and but I still think they miss what consisted of their life back in Syria. So it's like I think for every person who has gone through a life-changing event like leaving your own home, it's not easy to adapt to a new society and a new climate and a new culture and everything. So yeah, it's a life-changing situation. So it's not easy. I know that for sure.
Yeah, it's never easy to like create a really a good environment for newcomers, and for newcomers themselves to adapt to the new environment as well. So we are so happy to hear that you're still in touch with Leanne and talking to her and her family and the updates. And thanks for all these sharings as well. And we really like to hear like all these stories behind, not just after the movie, but we get more insights from your sharing, and we have learned a lot from this talking with you. And so the final question we would have is just an open question for you to see if you have any other messages you want to share with our audiences, and maybe also for people who just started to know more about refugees issues. Would you have any comments or remarks for them?
I mean, I think there is like unnumbered ways of speaking to people about taking action into even your own society, and being kind to your neighbor and being kind to the children in your street. And I think if you're able to sort of embrace the situation that you have in your own country or wherever you're residing, and you kind of appreciate this situation, then as long as you are able to do that, then you should also be aware that people around the world are suffering quite enormously. and to be able to give a thought or an action or do something in favor of others, whatever it is, it doesn't matter. And even just doing that to your own neighbor helps with the overall mentality of the world. So I don't think it's easy to change things with a film or with an action or with doing something, but you can maybe change something within yourself. And if you can do that, then that's maybe the biggest thing you can do.
Yeah, thank you so much, Agil. I truly appreciate the time you spent with us for this chit chat, and it has been really a great time having this conversation with you, and really like thank you so much for all these like sharings and the insights you have brought to us. And we also hope that all of the audiences watching this video would enjoy this discussion. And if you would like to know more about some of the issues related to refugees, or if you want to support our work in UNHCR, please visit the website unhcr.org/hk.